Hey, Human Geo. Happy Wednesday morning. Hope everybody's good. Thanks for all of you guys that turned in the What the World Eats project. If you haven't done so already, get that done and turn it in so I can make sure that you get rewarded for your hard work. All right, we actually have an important day of notes today. We have a new model, an agricultural land use model, which we'll go through, but let's look at our review of questions first. So, question one. Which country below is best represented by a population pyramid with a broad base that slopes quickly to a narrow top? So broad base, narrow top. As soon as we hear broad base, we should be thinking of LDC, less developed country. And so when we go through, because broad base means you're having lots of babies. So as we go through our options here, clearly the least developed country on our list is Uganda. So that would be the correct answer. All right, this is a little bit of a throw forward. We talked about this briefly. The outlying area serviced by an urban center is referred to, and you see this actually a lot, this term a lot on the AP test. So the outlying area is called the hinterland. A synonym that we've been using is periphery, right? We had core periphery. Well, if the city is the core, the area around the city is also called the hinterland. All right, so don't get confused with those two words. They mean the same thing. All right, our throwback today. What are the differences in the environmental impacts of farming and MDCs as compared to LDCs? This was one of our questions on the What the World Eats research guides. I think it was one of the more challenging questions. When we think about commercial farming, when we think about commercial farming, that is farming food for surplus to sell. There are always going to be several environmental concerns. A, it uses lots of fossil fuels, which creates greenhouse gases, which causes climate change. B, farmers tend to use a lot of pesticides to kill bugs, which can run off into rivers and streams, polluting water. And C, fertilizers that farmers put on the soil to help them grow more crops similarly can pollute water supplies in the surrounding areas. Now, LDCs is a little bit more complicated because it kind of depends on what type of farming you're doing. If people are doing subsistence farming, oftentimes there's very little environmental impact because they're small farms and they don't have a lot of technology that pollutes. If, however, they're doing slash and burn or shifting cultivation, that has a huge impact because those people are cutting down the rainforests. We know that trees are the lungs of the earth, so deforestation leads to increased climate change. Pastoral nomadism, walking from place to place with your herds, has little environmental impact. The fourth type, plantation, those big farms that farm one type of food for export, like coffee, tea, sugar, they also have lots of environmental impacts because lots of chemicals are used to protect those plants. All right, into the notes. This is going to be complicated. So if you have questions about what I'm posting, please email me because this is like a big, huge idea and it's kind of hard to present these models without you being in front of me asking questions on the spot. But this is called von Thunen's model or von Thunen's model for agricultural land use. All right, he was a German dude who lived in like the early 1800s. This model, I think he published in 1826. And basically, he was trying to describe why farmers grow crops where they do and what types of crops they should grow. So the model itself, the basic form of the model kind of looks like a bullseye with these rings, all right? The center of the bullseye, the black dot, that is the city. Another way to think about it is that is the market. That's where farmers will take their stuff to sell. All right. Now, working outwards through the rings. Next to the city, you have fruits, vegetables, and dairy farms. Okay? I'll get to why they're located here in a second. The next ring out are forests. It's kind of weird, right? Next ring out is extensive field crops. That's like wheat and corn. Farms that would have really big land use. And last is ranching. This is, the happy cows walking around eating grass. All right. Von Thunen arrived at this model by thinking about three variables. How much does land cost? How much does it cost to transport the goods that you grow? And how far away are you from the market? All right, does that make sense? All right, so here's the classic model that we just looked at. City, fruits, vegetables, dairy, forests, crops like wheat and corn, and then grazing. Another way to think about it, we know a lot of cities are on like rivers. This is what it might look like if your city or market is located on a river. But it's the same basic thing. It's not in circles, it's kind of in strips. All right, so let me explain why these rings are where they are. So fruits, vegetables, and dairy close to the cities. There's a couple reasons for that. A, they're delicate, and you don't want to transport them a long way because they'll get damaged and bruised, and you won't be able to sell them. So you want to have a short distance to the market. And secondly, they're perishable. So milk spoils, fruits and vegetables rot, so you need to get them to your customers as quickly as possible. Therefore, they should be located closest to the city. Second ring out, which is kind of a weird one. This is your forests. And remember, von Thunen wrote this in 1826, where they were still building buildings out of wood. Today, we use steel and bricks, a mortar. The reason why he would have forests there is that the wood is extremely heavy, which means it costs a lot to transport. So you don't want to have to transport it a long way because you'll spend your money on transportation costs, which will eat up your profits. So basically the bulk and weight of the wood is why it would be located in the second ring. All right, as we move out, here it's kind of rings 3 and 4. Those are crops like corn, wheat, rice for some cities. These are crops that require a lot of land. So the farther away from the city, the cheaper the land is. So you need lots of land to grow that stuff. Second, they're pretty cheap to transport. The corn isn't going to damage itself. The rice, once it's dried out, is not perishable. And you can stack this stuff on top of each other. So it being cheaper to transport and cheaper land means it's farther away from the city. The last ring was ranching, and that required lots of land for the cows to walk around in and eat the grass. All right. Today we know we have feedlots instead of ranching in this country. But again, we're going back in time about 180 years. Okay. Now you might think to yourself, doesn't the meat spoil on its way to the market? It would, but what normally would happen is the ranchers would literally march their cows into the city, and the slaughterhouses would be located in the city themselves. All right. So the actual, creation of the meat and the killing of the animals happened in the city, not out here, because that meat would have been perishable. All right. I hope that explains like his basic thinking. Another way to think about it, if it's going to cost a lot to transport a good, it should be located near the market. If it doesn't cost a lot to transport the good, it can be located far away from the market. We're actually going to unpack that idea a little bit more in our next unit on manufacturing. So I mentioned this term perishability, right? This is the idea that crops go bad, crops can rot. The milk and dairy used to spoil. And so the more perishable your products are, the closer you want to be to your market. All right? Because the longer time it takes to transport it, the more likely some of your crops will rot and you won't make a profit off them. All right. This is kind of an interesting graph. I know it looks kind of funky. Go all the way down here to Malawi. This is generally speaking how far goods, this kind of ranks how far your food travels before it gets to your plate. So in the United States, we get food from all over the world. In the wintertime, we get lots of food from the southern hemisphere, like Chile. And our food travels thousands and thousands of miles from farm to production warehouse to supermarket to our plates at home. Generally speaking, The less developed a nation is, as we go down to India and China, the less distance their food travels before they're able to eat it. So we know subsistence farmers, they just have to walk out their back door because they grow the crops that they eat. So their food only travels maybe a couple hundred yards. Whereas where you're used to a diet where you can eat anything at any time, like the United States, our food's going to travel a long way. And again, that contributes to climate change and greenhouse gases as transportation pollutes the environment. All right. This is the last slide, and I know I'm going over a lot quickly. I said that von Thunen wrote this model in 1826. Today, there are a lot of things that don't hold true. And they don't hold true for several reasons, mostly technological innovations. So trucks, trains, ships, and even airplanes now offer refrigeration. And so that cuts down on the perishability of fruits and vegetables as opposed to 180 years ago. This is why I can get an apple from Chile in February and my supermarket has strawberries in the middle of March because they're transported through refrigerated transportation. Transportation has gotten lots cheaper. Okay, we saw the video on t-shirts where a t-shirt costs 17 cents to get from Columbia to New York City. So boats are the cheapest way to transport stuff. Trains are second cheapest. Trucks, like the big tractor trailers, are third cheapest. Airplanes are the most expensive. But these are like floating cities, some of these container ships. And so the individual cost of transportation has gone way down over the last 180 years. Last thing, we have some kind of production procedures that extend shelf life. So canning of fruits and vegetables, like you can have a can of peaches on your cabinet for over a year, and they'll still be good to eat. Pasteurization of milk expands the lifespan of the milk and prevents it from spoiling. All right. So these technological innovations are kind of faults in the model now as they apply to our dietary habits in the 21st century. All right, your work today, reach out with questions because I know this isn't very intuitive. But on Mr. Evans' history, you're going to be doing von Thunen's model. And don't sleep on the chapter 10 guide. That is for next Wednesday. All right. That's under our agriculture unit as well on Classroom. So reach out with questions that you might have. Hope everybody has a great day. Take care.